Okay, we are live for a Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. Excited to be back. Looking forward to connecting and going through this prior week's events as well as going into what could be in April. But before we do that, Mario, how you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm doing well this April Fool's Day. It was actually snowing this morning when Billy and I went out,
Yeah,
and it wasn't an April Fool's. It was actually snowing. We've had sunshine, rain, everything, all seasons today. But yeah, I'm doing well.
that's good.
The world continues to be quite hectic,
Right.
but I think we all know, you and I and our viewers know where it's heading.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And so, man, let's it's lots of things have unfolded this past week, really showing more of where it looks like the monetary shifting is how it's playing out. So, looking forward to diving in and sharing some thoughts. Got lots of articles, and before we do that, let's check in, make sure everybody's tuning in. Definitely make sure you guys hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channel, and feel free to throw out thoughts, questions, ideas, suggestions, and we'll try to jump on it as we get moving. But let's jump right into it, Mario. So I had a chance to put together a little bit of a visual aid for today's live stream, kind of putting everything from this past week together. But I want to get your thoughts on it. What are you seeing within this visual aid right here?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of things that are real. Yes, there is a ruble banknote, but next to it, you've got oil, you've got gold, you've got a gram, a bar, 1 gram gold bar in the 5,000. And there's been a lot of speculation. Has Russia gone into a gold standard? I don't really think they have gone into a gold standard or pegged the ruble, but what they're trying to do is stabilize the ruble, and they've been succeeded in doing that. There seems to be a floor for the dollar now around 80. I think
Yeah.
right now the dollar is around 85, so the dollar is bounced up a little bit versus
Yeah.
the ruble. And yes, there's speculation of whether if we break through, let's say, to break through that 70 level in the ruble, that we could go, 80 level, that we could go to 70. That would correspond to a price of gold about 2,200 or something. If you keep that ratio of 5,000 rubles per 1 gram.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of speculation about that. Even I have speculated about that and tweeted about that. But it's not just gold. It's all the other current commodities. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Wheat, natural gas. As of today, Russia will not sell natural gas to Europe except in rubles.
Yeah.
I think they're still selling some of their gas in euros or dollars because they might have some long-term contracts. But contracts starting from today is only in rubles.
Yeah.
And of course, Europe is for some reason saying they can't do that. Why? Why can't they use the foreign exchange market to
Right.
buy rubles? Well, it's because they're trying to really shut out the Russian economy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think the West, for example, has a lot of debt and very little commodities. US has commodities, but a lot of debt. Europe has a lot of debt, and we're highly leveraged. While Russia, on the other hand, has very little debt, is very wealthy resource-wise. So I think they got the upper hand. Maybe China, not as, they have a lot of debt, but they have a huge productive capacity as well. So yeah, that's what that picture tells me, is that we almost might get maybe I could call it the gold curtain. Because you had the Iron Curtain dividing the West and East after World War II.
Yeah.
Maybe now we're going to have the BRICS nation will be where the economy is real.
Yeah.
People buy and sell real things. The money is sound, well, relatively sound. And then there's a gold curtain, and we're in the West are, in the world of inflation,
Yeah.
government spending, debt, and a rising cost of living.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe the Russians won't be able to be buying Porsches and Louis Vuitton handbags from Europe, but they will be a lot better off.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Good point. So yeah, so in putting that little visual aid together, I'll throw that real quick and then we'll jump into some articles. But I was trying to summarize pretty much the entire week as best I could. Just basically showing that 1 gram for 5,000 is what the central bank, has set as a floor as to what they'll be willing to pay for it. And of course, today being April 1st, not sure if it was April Fool's Day on Russia's part, but it doesn't seem like that. It don't seem to be that way. And so I pretty much said that Putin put a hard line in the sand. He drew a line in the sand the way the West has been for the last several decades when it comes to the other things happening between especially in the Middle East. But it looks like by him basically saying after today, pay us in rubles or, you stand to be shut off from energy. Now we'll find out later this week how the world responds to that. But as of now, there's going to be pushback. But I think this hard line is saying with, basically saying pay us in our own or you're going to be without. It basically just lets the world know that, hey, there's a change of the guard right now.
Well, the other thing as well, the West has pushed Russia into doing that because they've just stolen basically 300 billion or so in fiat currency reserves that they had with Western central banks. So what's the point of Russia selling precious or real things to Europe and getting paid in euros or dollars? And then have those euros and dollars be confiscated again, because Russia sees this as a default.
Yeah.
They stole their money. It's like you and I, we had let's say you have money with your bank, and then they see a story about you on the internet and they don't like it and they say, Mike, we've frozen your account. Would you put more money with them? I wouldn't.
Right. So yeah, so I did an interview earlier this week, and the guy was talking about how, based upon all the activity, what we've witnessed is that the world has recognized that at any moment you can have your assets frozen, or the oligarchs, whoever they are, have their assets seizure of their assets, and then with Canada, you can have your accounts frozen because of your participation in things that doesn't comply with what they want you to do. So those are three things that more people are coming to. It's coming to light that, if you don't really have it, do you really own it, will be the question that people will probably get the answer to this year. But let's jump into a couple headlines real quick. So this, that visual aid basically goes upon this. So people probably wonder what's, April 1st. But here, little headline from the West. Take from it what you may. But, Putin threatens to shut off gas exports to countries that don't pay in rubles starting April 1st. But the Kremlin offers some wiggle room. And so it looks like more reports are coming out saying that the hard line in the sand is not as hard, just because he don't want, I'm not sure, take of it what you may. But here's another little headline that just came out not long ago. Russia will not turn off gas supplies to Europe from Friday, according to the Kremlin. So
I think it's because there are long-term contracts that are still running.
Yeah.
And I guess we need to be clear about that.
Yeah.
But I think what the Russians mean is that if they want to sign up a contract from today for a month, let's say, it has to be in rubles. But if you have a contract that was signed for, let's say, 1st of December 2021 until the 1st of May 2022, that's still running. So I don't think I think that's what they mean, because I think the mainstream media in the West is probably going to try to not explain that and just say, oh, they're cutting everything off, and they're not.
Yeah, they're definitely going to use this to their advantage, because outside of the shift that's taking place, like this week alone, to me, has been a turning point in monetary history, because Russia has basically stepped to the forefront in leading this charge away from the petrodollar system. And over here in the West, and I'm sure even in the UK, they're using all types of other things to really divert attention off that. We got what's called the Putin price hike at the pumps or something like that. And all these other things. I'm sure UK got some cliche type stuff to refer to.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I saw, that you said it was a historic week for the monetary system, and I think you're right. And also, it's just another nail in the coffin of the petrodollar, because we saw yesterday that President Biden released 180 million barrels from the strategic petroleum reserves.
Yeah.
And that's a record. And it shows a lot of weakness, because he did that about an hour after the Saudis and the major OPEC countries
Mhm.
decided not to pump more oil for the U.S.
Yeah.
because I don't think they want to. They're concerned as well because you probably remember last August 15th, Russia and Saudis they signed a new cooperation agreement.
Mhm.
So you see the U.S. is unfortunately losing a lot of power,
Mhm.
and I think the 180 million corresponds to 9 days of oil consumption.
Mhm.
It's not going to run out in 9 days because they're gonna uh, let out 1 million barrels a day. So
Yeah.
that's going to be over 180 days, but it's only 5% of U.S. oil consumption.
Yeah.
And I read that article. The analysts from like J.P. Morgan and other trading energy trading companies, they're saying that they're going to have to buy those a lot of those barrels back because they
Mhm.
need to keep the reserves up.
Yeah.
So that's only going to make the price even higher next year and the year after. They're predicting like 150, 130 or even $150 a
There.
barrel oil next year.
Yeah. That's
And
interesting.
I think Putin, sorry, not Putin, Biden did that last year. He released some oil reserves.
Mhm.
There was a correction down, but I think oil was around 70, and look where we're now.
Yeah.
I think he's just trying to. He's desperate about the elections.
Yeah. Now, so as you're explaining that article there, one thing that came to my mind is that, okay, you're depleting our reserves now. And so, like my little rant last night where I was talking about how it wouldn't surprise me that, depleting our reserves plays into that going green. Then at some point later, if there's a hiccup, they can say, we're suffering from energy. We need to now do the next step and a part of this whole destruction of civilization and in general. And of course, this whole, open up our reserves is a part of that equation, because if you deplete our country, then now we're in desperate times, even more so. Now it's that next step or whatever the Great Reset agenda really
Yeah.
is. So once again, I take everything with a little grain of salt, because it doesn't help us whatsoever, especially them having shut down the pipelines before and trying to close down all the prior oil infrastructures to go carbon neutral and all that crap. Come on now, the world runs on energy, and these guys are already ruining it. So okay. Anyway, so for those tuning in, definitely thoughts, ideas, suggestions. We'll keep it going. Lots of things to touch on. And so outside of what's kicked this week off with the Russian central bank getting in the gold game, buying, gold well under spot price, might I add. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. And then also to move further along, looks like, India has decided to participate in this shift by working directly with Russia. And I think that's, the attempt country by country, and they're all BRIC nations. And so the friendly nations will get the most love up front, and then the unfriendly nations have to pay the price, either rubles or possibly gold. So before we move forward, what are your thoughts on the initial quasi peg of that 5,000 rubles to 1 gram of gold that they're
Yeah.
willing to buy? Why that? What are you thinking?
Well, initially the price was around, in terms of dollars, was
Yeah.
1550, because we always think of the price of gold in dollars. But I
Right.
think the fact that the Russian central bank is actually didn't even mention the dollar, just said 1 gram of gold is 5,000 rubles. I think that was a really good move.
Yeah.
And it's also led to a strengthening of the ruble as well. And yes, I think it's a really clever move, as I said. But it will be interesting to see the stronger the ruble gets.
Yeah.
Because it's dropped from like a high, the dollar was like at 165. Now it's in the low 80s. So the stronger the ruble gets, the price, that peg 5,000 for 1 gram doesn't change,
Yeah.
but the dollar price changes. And so it will be interesting to see if we go, to 70, as I said earlier,
Yeah.
and that translates to over $2,000, and we're still at 1,900. You could see a lot of gold start flowing from the West, people buying, from the West at
Yeah.
1,900, selling to Russia for the equivalent of 2,200 because they're going to sell it for rubles.
Mhm.
But and then you might ask, what are they going to do with those rubles? Well, they're going to buy all the other stuff that Russia has,
Yeah.
like wheat, metals, gas, oil. So it's a really interesting move. I have to say, we are speculating and we
Mhm.
are making a lot of assumptions. I think it's still going to take a lot of time to
Right.
to see what plays out.
Yeah, I do agree. And so as you're speaking, just going through some of the changes over the last, let me see here. So I just inverted, let me go back here. I inverted the, whatever, so the ruble to USD. And so as of now, so March 8th was that turning point where it was at an all-time low against the dollar at 150 or whatever, or 0.007. And then literally that was the opening of what I call the opening of the turning of the monetary tides in a sense, because now there's another way of pricing energy, especially from Russia. And from that moment on, the ruble, as you mentioned, just continued to, gain strength up to the dollar, to where it's like, wow, like this. Let me know, because my history is not that great. But has there ever been, in your opinion, a turning point like this, utilizing another currency for energy, as well as possibly other world resources, fertilizers, things like that? Because that all factored in there. We're only hearing about the cost of energy in ruble terms. So has there ever been another turning point in such a timely fashion that you're aware of?
Well, Saddam Hussein tried
Mm,
to price his oil in euros, and
right,
we saw what happened to him. We saw Gaddafi. He
right,
tried to set up a gold dinar for all the African nations, and we
right.
saw what happened to him. Uh, I guess I think in Brazil they had like a commodities exchange in the
Mhm.
90s or 80s, and they did trade some of coffee and other stuff in Brazilian currency, but that never took hold.
Yeah.
But I guess you have to go back to early 1900s
Mhm.
where things traded in sterling. So
Mm,
it's a
mm.
big change, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, and
Yeah, so man, I was attempting to further my monetary literacy by going back into time, just to get a better sense as to the transition that occurred out of the sterling. And so I was actually doing a little homework on my side, just because, as I always mentioned, the similarities, we can learn a lot from history. And so this is just the old change of the monetary order. But I've actually gone back and looking at how World War I was a turning point,
oh
because
yeah,
whenever gold flows, power shifts. And I was looking at some of this, I guess, I can probably dive deeper, but it was one of the, okay. So man, you got me excited, Mario. I'm going to show you something real quick that I didn't get a chance to rant on, but it's about yeah, let me pull it up real quick. So here, copy image. Let me show you something that, and I was reading some of, just going through history books, and I was diving in, and here's something that popped up in my little bootleg studies, but just how gold during this moment began changing. So of course World War I kicked things off, and then the Federal Reserve shortly thereafter, and then at the same time all the gold was flowing from the UK. And I got some articles talking about how there was even a moment where the chancellor of the Enrique, I can't pronounce the word, but Enrique or whatever, so some guy was talking about confiscating UK the gold sovereigns, and saying it was patriotic to turn it in and things like that. So those are things I never heard about in history
yeah.
books. And so I was blown away when I was
Well,
coming up with
I think prior to World War One,
Mhm.
yes, the sterling was the major reserve currency, but
Right.
I don't know if there's someone's made a really interesting little like film about reserve currencies,
Mhm.
and it shows the weightings
Yeah.
going back to like I think 150 years or so. And just before World War One, it
Mhm.
was like 40% of world reserves were in sterling,
Mhm.
20% in French francs, 18% in Reichsmarks or
Yeah.
Deutschmarks.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing was that uh, those currencies were all backed by gold. We were on a gold standard.
Right.
So you could even say that it was kind of a multipolar, uh, monetary system, even though we say sterling was the major reserve.
Mhm.
But if France had 20% and Germany 20%, it was relatively equal. And then with World War One and World War Two, that basically ruined Europe because
Yeah.
Europe had and America made like a bandit because none of those wars hit America in terms of the country itself.
Right.
Yes, Americans were died in World War One and World War Two, but American business and industry did really well.
Right.
And then that's why Bretton Woods, the U.S. had about 60% of the world's gold reserves, and that's why the dollar became the major reserve currency. But
Yeah.
I think now we're going to move to, yeah, the ruble will be important, but I think there will be several major reserve currencies like the ruble. I don't think it would be as big,
Hmm.
but the yuan, the euro, and the dollar. Whether the dollar and the euro are gonna like play the game, it remains to be seen. But I think they should.
Right.
Um,
I think I think it will be in the best interest of on behalf of the people to give us options and alternatives. But yet, once again, we know, what's the word? What's the saying? Absolute power creates absolute
corrupt power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
right. So it's like, okay, so knowing that they don't want to give any of that up. So, the fact that Jerome Powell in his little press conference a couple months ago mentioned that there is a possibility of having two, so he said two, he didn't say 3, 4, 5. So we'll find out, but it definitely will challenge everything on this side
Yeah,
of the
but
water.
you sent me something today that Elizabeth Warren wants to set up a central bank digital currency,
Yeah.
and the same thing is going on here in the UK. So I think this is a desperate move. It's not
Mhm.
going to work because central bank digital currency is basically it's basically a straitjacket on the people. It's not going to be real money,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm not sure what's going to pan out.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the e-cash legislation that was thrown out this past week?
Yeah, I think you sent that. I think you sent that to me last week.
Yeah, here is so this no, this I think this was released early this week. So on March 28th, 4 representatives came out with the Electric Currency and Security Hardware Act, which is said e-cash, and ultimately it's coming from the Treasury. So they're saying the Treasury are the ones, the Secretary of Treasury, to develop and pilot digital dollar technologies that replicate the privacy respecting features of physical cash in order to promote greater financial inclusion, maximize consumer protection, and data privacy. So this is from the
Yeah,
Treasury. So
I
this is
don't
something
buy
new.
that. I don't buy that at all. You can never you always go whatever politicians, because it is the treasury politicians, whatever they say, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's gonna make it, you
Oh
know,
man.
and I don't know what's gonna. I think the only solution or alternative we have,
Mhm.
yes, unfortunately, we might have to have an exposure to this central bank digital currency to pay for things. But if you're able, if you have some savings and money set aside, maybe take it out of the system and keep it out of the system. You
Mhm.
might have to like put it back into the system, but yeah, I think it's a really bad thing, this central bank digital currency.
Right. I agree. And thumbing through this a little bit, I did a little rant earlier in the week, but when it came out, it caught my attention because when I was reading through this is the actual piece of legislation in its entirety explaining what's going on. And it says, what is e-cash? And then the very first thing is legal tender. And so
Hmm.
as of right now, with the CBDC talk, Fed coin, whatever that version is called, it doesn't have that legal tender, status yet. So they need some legislative approval for that. But then if you have this conversation with the e-cash or the Fed coin or whatever versions they want to, whoever issues it, I think it's all about getting that conversation started
Yeah,
on how to put it before Congress to go ahead and put something on the books in the form of a digital asset so that it'll be legal tender, whoever issues it. So I think this is more so about getting that talk
yeah,
started, whether it's now, this year, next year, whatever. But, it's what they want to do because, they want to definitely have this out, I think, before, the Russia officially pulls the plug
yeah,
and the world runs officially from the dollar. So
yeah.
that was just my 2 cents.
I mean, the only money or currency that needs to have legal tender behind it is like not real money. It's fiat money, fiat
Right.
currency. If you go back to I mean, it's a shame that I'm sure there are a few Congress people that know about the Constitution, that everything is set up there.
Yeah.
The mint will coin silver and gold coins,
Hmm.
and I don't see the problem in going back to gold and silver coins.
Yeah.
Um, and if you go back to the 1800s, for example, there were no legal tender laws.
Hmm.
And I think people were using Spanish dollars up until the Civil War. So it didn't matter where the coin was from, as long
Right.
as gold and silver. That's the kind of world I think I'd like to see again.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I'm using a Russian ruble gold coin or a
Mhm.
dollar coin. You could, it makes things much easier, but that would mean central bankers and politicians would lose control.
Right.
And it's all about control, unfortunately.
Right. 100%. And then just to add a little bit more to that, here is 31 U.S. Code subsection 5013 talking about legal tender status. And the last time there were some significant changes made to this was when the Federal Reserve note was put into play here, because as we can see, it says United States coins and currency are legal tender for all debts, public and private. Then they put this little new portion in here, including Federal Reserve notes and circulating notes of Federal Reserve banks and nation banks. And so they're going to have to put, United States coins and currency, comma, and digital asset tokens or some crap like that. Then
Well,
to really
yeah,
keep it going.
they might still have Federal Reserve notes. People still might use those.
Right.
But,
That's not going nowhere. They're
yeah.
going to add to it. That's all. So that's what I think the CBD, all this stuff is about initially, but we'll see. But we all know it's coming. Let's keep it moving, man. Let's get into just more of the whole. Here's our little clip that you commented on, how the pressure is on. They're concerned with how things are playing out, and because of India, U.S. warns India not to help Russia undermine the dollar, or there will be consequences. What type of consequences do you think, Mario? More sanctions, or a slap on the wrist, or what do you think?
I actually, at this point, I don't think the U.S. will be able to do anything to India, seeing that they haven't really helped Ukraine that much since the Russian invasion.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk, and all the actions they've taken have backfired, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The ruble is back to where it was prior to the invasion, and the significance of that warning is just that if you're a really strong nation, have a strong currency, you don't need to warn people. Oh, you're going to undermine my currency. Don't do that. But if you go back, actually, even to 1971, I think John Connolly, the Secretary of the Treasury, he was asked at an international conference, what do you think of the dollar? And he said, well, the dollar is our currency, but it's your problem, you see, because he knew that they had nothing. The dollar was the Americans could do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
But now it's the opposite. It's like it's really low to ask India to help keep the dollar going. I just think that's how I look at it.
Right.
It just seems highly significant.
Yeah. Here's here's something that we didn't probably think about, regime change. And so Biden was quoted earlier this week saying that, Putin has to go, or something like that.
Oh yeah, it was a speech last weekend in
Yeah.
Poland, but then they backtracked on that, and then on Monday they had this stupid story about Will Smith that dominated everything. So no one really talked about that regime change thing.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that President Biden is like not really in charge. The guy is, I mean, the guy shouldn't be running. He shouldn't be commander in chief.
And that's it's in my personal opinion. He's just a front man. He's a puppet. He's just a face to put in front of whoever's speaking behind him, speaking.
Yeah, he is the he epitomizes the corrupt deep state. He's been in politics for 50 years. They've raked millions and millions of dollars for him, for his family. So he's trying to defend this corrupt, crumbling system, I think.
And speaking of which, how he's just basically a front man. So here's an article from this week earlier when he gave a speech. It said Joe Biden spotted using type Q cards to quell flames off the cuff remarks on the Putin. So they showed a picture of him actually looking at his notes, and it was well written of like, say this, say this, say this. Don't deviate from those words, or we're going to get in trouble here. And so that was funny. But yet, desperate times calls for desperate measures, and what better way to continue the lining the pockets of the Western oligarchs and special interest groups other than sending freshly printed units or digital versions of it to Ukraine. So U.S. is to send another 500 million. They just sent 1 point something billion, I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago, but they're sending another 500 million.
Ukraine better spend that quickly, because it won't be that, pretty soon that 500 million won't buy a coffee.
You know what? And the sad thing is, in my opinion, that this 500 million will not actually reach its way to Ukraine. It's going to be funneled through the Ukraine narrative back into the pockets of those, politicians that got laboratories over there, special interest businesses over there. And I was looking, of course, I love to go down rabbit holes. And I was looking at some of the connections, not beyond just the politicians' children having special interest over there, but a lot of the spouses of the current politicians we have now have businesses that do business through Ukraine, like logistics companies, things that, shipping, pack, all types of stuff that has nothing to do with energy or anything like that. But they have, bases and stuff in Ukraine. I'm like, I'd imagine some of that 500 is going to filter through those because they're suffering losses. So they're basically trying to, recoup some of those losses with taxpayer funds. So,
yeah, here we have this foreign aid thing as well. And I don't know, they send like 1 or 2% of GDP to,
yeah.
And there's always outrage when, when they try to cut that back, that foreign aid, and keep the money in the country. There's always, big furore. And it's because of that, because those pounds that go, to the third world or less developed countries, they will flow back into the pockets of, the lobbyists that, that are close to the politicians. So it's corrupt. It's corruption, but now they call corruption or bribing lobbying.
Yeah, to say the least. And then I typed in just UK aid, and the first thing pops up is UK sending lethal aid, not just fun. It's sending lethal aid to Ukraine. So armor, military equipment,
well, that's going to come back to the military, contractors here in the UK.
Right.
That's all it's going to do.
Yeah. So they're basically lining the pockets of the military, industrial, pharmaceutical, industrial. How many other industrial complexes are there?
Financial.
Yeah. There's not a precious metals industrial complex. All right, man. Let's keep it moving. More stuff to touch on. What do we want to head next? Let me see. I got so much stuff open up here. Let's just touch on this real quick. Let me see here. This is from your neck of the woods, Mario. What's happening on with this one here?
Well, because today is the 1st of April. It's like the new financial year, and I think from April, a lot of the energy providers, utility providers, they can raise the prices, because we've seen how energy prices and natural gas prices in Europe have gone up, since September last year. But and it's one of the reasons why a lot of the energy providers went bust, because we had a cap on the prices, but the caps have gone off as of today.
Yeah.
So this is, for you and I who have been following this is not a surprise, but a lot of people are going to be, going to be hurt. The general public are going to be hurt. And this was in the cards even before 2022. But of course, they're going to blame it a lot on Putin.
Yeah.
But and the other thing that's happening now, you see a lot of people in the mainstream, even economists, because they're all Keynesians mostly, they're saying, oh, the chancellor, who's the secretary of the Treasury equivalent, chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, they're saying, oh, he needs to help people more. But the reason we're having inflation, the rising prices, rising cost of living, is because they basically borrowed 20% of the economy in 2020, 21 to keep everyone at home uh, and not producing. And now they want the government to do more. It's just going to make it worse. But unfortunately, people, yeah, they seem to think this money from the government comes from money heaven or something, that it doesn't come from their pockets.
Yeah.
So that's the situation. And it's not only happening here. I'm sure it's going to happen elsewhere because unfortunately the West is still under a tight grip of the Keynesian, basically.
Yeah. So I guess this is this the gentleman you're referring to here?
Yeah. Apparently, he's given an extra £1,000 or something for some kind, but that £1,000 will come from the general public. It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Very interesting. And so here's a little
Yeah.
cover you sent
Yeah,
me.
so the energy bills are gonna finally go up because they were capped.
Mhm.
Council tax, yeah, I saw my council tax. We received like an invoice a week or two ago.
Yeah.
Actually, our local council tax only went up 1 or 2%. Unfortunately, I live within Greater London,
Mhm.
and there's a mayor of London. It's not the city of London; it's Greater London. It's the guy called what's his name? I forgot now. Khan, Sadiq Khan.
Mhm.
And last year, the taxes just for London, and I have to pay that as well, went up 9.9, and this year they're going 8.9. So if it wasn't for Sadiq Khan, who's bankrupted, transport for London and all these, actually our council taxes wouldn't be that bad.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, a lot of people on lower incomes, the general public, they're
Yeah.
going to suffer. And I think it's going to get worse. I don't think we've seen yet the impact of the consequences of what's happened after the invasion of the Ukraine on food prices and everything, things like that.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's get into some questions and any thoughts or whatnot you guys want to share. So feel
Yeah.
free to throw out some highlights or thoughts or whatever. Highlight everything in dollar sort of stand out. We'll try to jump on it. But let's get to some questions and some thoughts. And speaking of which, also I saw somebody mention the price of metals, and looks like as of right now a little bit of red out there. But one thing I've been harping on is that regardless of the actual price we see, the activity happening out east will definitely continue to put pressure on the markets that control these prices over here, to where it increases the chance of something breaking sooner than later, or
Yeah.
or the light's going to go out. Either one. They're
I
going to
saw
put lights
someone
out either way.
said silver at 25.05 and then said April Fools. But yeah, I was thinking, I think yesterday, about what's going on in gold and silver, that it's been frustrating.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I think everything has its time,
Yeah.
and at least you're building up your community on YouTube, and
Mhm.
I've been building up mine, and that let's say if gold that spiked in 2020 21 to 10,000 and
Mhm.
then come off to like 3 right now, uh, it would have been really hard to get people on board.
Mhm.
So in a way, I don't mind. I have been stacking for 20 years, and it has sometimes been frustrating, but generally it's been a good way to protect your savings.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just gives us a bit more time to get prepared, because it's not that gold and silver are going up or have been going up, or
Right.
commodities that are going up. It's all the dollar and all the currencies that are basically collapsing. So it's only a matter of time
Mhm.
when they totally collapse. And when that happens, gold and silver are not going to go up.
Right.
It will look like they have gone up, but they'll just be real, something real that will still hold their value. And that's how we need to think.
Right.
Uh,
I do agree. I do agree. So that's why I always mention about, in my opinion, based upon how I view the monetary, game, gold and silver to me are stable. Now it's just, how we price them and fiat terms, but
Yeah.
I anticipate fluctuations because the manipulation on top of that. But at some point when it breaks, or based upon what happens out east,
Yeah.
we're going to see a
I
trajectory
think,
like never before.
yeah, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but the last thing that the fiat currencies will go against will be gold and silver towards the end. That's why it's at the bottom of Exter's pyramid.
Yeah, good point. Now watch this just real quick. I saw in the chat somebody threw out something about your chancellor over there, and so I just grabbed this real quick, and it
Oh
says,
yeah, oh yeah. I can talk about that. Yeah, because we're supposed not to deal with Russia, but his wife, her dad is one of the richest men in India. He's worth like billions and billions of dollars, and his company is still dealing with Russia. And his wife is getting, she's got shares in the business.
right.
And she's getting money, dividends from that company. And this week, this week, someone actually in the mainstream media had him on TV and asked him, your wife is benefiting from Russia. And he said, well, it's none of my business. Basically, he said it wasn't any of his business. I
Oh,
mean,
really?
his wife's money, legally it's his money too.
Yeah.
It,
Hey, man, keep it in. Hey, they
so,
keep it in the
yeah,
family
so
over there,
for
man.
them, it's okay to keep doing business with Russia, but for us peons, it's not.
Yeah. They keep it in the family, man. It's like, yeah, it's like George Carlin said, it's one big party, and we ain't in it. We ain't in it. Or
Rolf
something.
Steiner is asking if they're British. Well, as you can see, Rishi Sunak was born here, but he's of Indian descent.
Yeah.
And I think his father-in-law is in India. His wife is Indian. So they're like British Indian, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, they're obviously profiting off of this transition as well. And that's the thing. If the truth is what's come out, and that's another thing. I saw a little excerpt on the release of what was the most it was the Panama Papers 2-3 years ago. What was the name of the recent, tranche of papers thrown out there exposing people's finances?
Is it Paradise? I don't know. I forgot.
If you might know, let us know real quick. But point was, it was listing a lot of, it had more Russian oligarchs that were, smuggling funds, had funds everywhere, and they're trying to use that as saying that this shines more light on the corruption in Russia. That we have to bring that to the light.
The Conservative Party, who've been in power here since 2010,
Paradise Papers.
A lot of their donors are big Russian business people.
Yeah.
But they're not going to talk much about that.
Yeah. So yeah, feel free to throw out some more questions, ideas, thoughts. We'll definitely try to talk on it a little bit more. Let me see what else is out there. I guess Pandora, Ukraine papers.
Pandora's box.
Yeah. What else you got? India is part of the BRICS. Okay, so it was out there. India is part of the BRICS banking system. The debt owners are fighting over the debt slaves. Yeah. Okay. Now, so here is something also that I put out there. With recent activity, we have Russia and China. China, their interoperable banks situation, their card payments is operational. It's been that way for a while. Now, India is looking to join forces and do direct transactions with Russia. Which country do you think is going to be next? And so, will it be South Africa or out of just the BRICS?
Well, you told me, you showed me an article before we came on that Brazil, having a lot of dollar reserves for yuan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even the UK could eventually. I think people have to get on board.
So do you think there's a possibility that one of the G7 plus, which happens to be the ones in the unfriendly category, one of them would jump ship first and join in?
I think so, because there's a lot of Chinese banks still in the city of London.
Yeah.
And I think the city of London's been working with the Chinese to trade Chinese government bonds.
Yeah.
And I think the British are always, they will, do whatever benefits them.
Yeah.
And they will deal with anyone. Right now, it seems like, they're like when Sleepy Joe bites the dust, I think they'll jump ship.
Yeah, let me share with you, if you don't mind, a visual aid I put together earlier in the week, showing some of the transitions. And I just mentioned Russia reopens the gold window by bringing gold, the topic of gold, to the forefront again. And so at the very bottom here, I put, unfriendly countries to the left with some red, lines showing that, those are the nations that are expected to pay directly in rubles. And then the countries that are labeled friendly, they're the ones that got more options. They can pay in rubles. And of course, China and Turkey can do currency swaps. And then their energy guy mentioned, Bitcoin as well. And then we got the 1 gram, possibly for 1 barrel at some point. But yeah, it ultimately puts pressure on all the dollar-denominated SWIFT, the Fed, the CME group, LBMA. I mean, you name it.
The thing is, the friendly countries, a lot of them, they have real things to trade with Russia and China. The unfriendly countries, all we have really is a lot of debt.
Debt, right. So it's like, they're exporting debt, and the West and the Eastern nations want real things. So ultimately, as I put to the far left, it's all about world resources, real world resources, and how and what they use to price it in, because obviously they're tired of accepting dollars.
Yeah, and all this will mean, the dollar will still be around, but it will just be, Americans will have to start earning in order to consume, because for 50 years, America has been able to just print and buy things, and it looks like Russia, China, and a lot of the G7, a lot of the friendly countries, if we want to call them, they want to trade for real things. They've had enough. I think they also see that this debt system is on its last legs.
And another point to highlight even more what you're talking about in the Western world, to probably even hone in a little bit more, the West or the US or whatever, we haven't really been buying anything. We've been financing it. And so everything in the Western nations, mortgages, credit cards, car notes.
We haven't really paid it with real money.
We never paid for it.
And they've given us real things. Now they want proper payment. It's like the piper, has come,
come due. Yeah, it's time to collect. And if you want something real, or you're gonna use our currency first, and then if you got a problem with that, then just go ahead and just give us something neutral, something real and long lasting, such as gold or whatever else. So,
or silver.
That too. So speaking of which, let's just get ready to dial down. We're about that 47-minute mark, Mario. We can talk forever, I'm sure. We're first day of April. What are you foreseeing, Mario, for the rest of this month? What surprises around the corner that you think is possible?
Tiger to win the Masters.
Okay.
Well, surprises. I don't. It's difficult to say. I mean, I think it's just gonna this ruble, get natural gas. This conflict between Russia and Europe and the US is gonna escalate, and it's gonna continue probably for the next few months. And things are not going to stabilize. It's just going to get crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
And hope, I don't know about, I don't want to give targets for prices or anything, but I just think we have to keep our weights up, stacking, not think too much. I know even me, who's been an ardent gold bug for so many years, I get frustrated sometimes, but we have to always remember that it's how much weight you have of money that's important. And the other thing, like you say, is to be well with yourself and your family, spiritually, keep the faith and all that.
Right. And so that's a great point there. And another thing is, like, we didn't even, not once today did we talk about the Federal Reserve, what they said they were going to do within this time frame of dialing back, cutting down, and whatever. Because, like I mentioned, I think we all agree on this. It's irrelevant at this point because stuff is already happening. And on the U.S. side, domestically, real quick. I mean, I think the markets are down, unemployment, or was it what numbers came out today? I didn't get a chance.
Yeah, they were in line. The non-farm numbers. I think the significant thing today is that the 2 to 10 yield spread, treasury spread, is definitely inverted now. I think it's the first time since 2008. So the 2-year yield is higher than the 10-year, and right now it's by about 7 basis points, which is big. So that's forecasting trouble ahead for the economy, for the markets. because that's usually an inverted yield curve is a bad sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me just real quick, I'll put this on here.
Yeah. So
What you put out
you
there
can see
earlier.
the 2-year there is at almost 245,
Mhm.
and the 10-year now. Oh, actually, this is delayed.
Yeah, so this is a little old.
I can share. I can share where it is with you right now. Hold on. Quickly share screen.
And as always, for those tuning in, definitely make sure you hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. And if you're new to the channel, go Manico64 on YouTube, everywhere you can find him, he's there. And
Oh, there we go. Share. I don't think it's allowing me to share it. I'll send it to you, the link.
Okay.
And because that has changed. Hold on. And the reason why an inverted yield curve is significant is because usually banks, let's say they borrow money, 2-year money, and they take that and they lend 10 years, 10-year money, and they make a spread, and they keep, and they make a spread. But now they're having to borrow. If you scroll up, they're having to borrow short.
Oh yeah, right there. Yeah.
There, you see. So now we're at 243, the 2-year, and the 10 years at 237. So now, they don't have that arbitrage of borrowing short-term paper and then lending long-term. When you lend long-term, you receive the interest. So what's the point of borrowing at 243 and lending at 237? So what that means, bank profitability will go down and banks won't lend as much and the economy will slow down.
Yeah. And therefore, the words of recession have been surfacing more and more and more. But once again, that's just on a local level with our markets here. But then you factor in every other country similar responses. That's depressionary type stuff, could possibly.
I think what we're talking about, the bigger picture, is much more important.
Yeah, 100%, man. So very interesting time to say the least. But the good thing is everybody who's tuned in here, they've been well aware. And once again, like I always said before, if you are awake and aware as to what's really going on, you're part of the 1% of people who are at least a step ahead. Like, we can't control everything around us, but yet we can try to shield ourselves as best as we can, knowing that, of course, there will be pain no matter what. Everybody's going to go through some adjustments moving forward, but that's where I think, the spiritual aspect of things come into play because, the Lord already knew this, so it wasn't nothing new to him, and he's going to take care of his own like he always has. So, all right, people, we're at that 50-minute mark, and so we'll be on our normal time, but it was just great stuff we tried to cover. Hope you guys found value in this stuff here. As I always mention, do the best you can, stay prayed up, get your weight up, water, calories up. You know what time it is. Be blessed, be safe, and of course, as I mentioned, Manico64, go check them out, YouTube, and see you guys next week. We're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about. Peace.